This lesson is on systems of equations solving using substitution method. What we have here are two linear equations. If we were to graph these two lines on the same coordinate plane, they would intersect or cross each other at one point. And our goal here is to use algebra to find that one point where they would cross. At that one point, it is important to note that this y here and this y would be the exact same number. This x and this x here would be the exact same number. So, in order to find the point in which these two lines cross, where both the x and the y have the exact same number, we need to follow these two steps. First of all, solve for a variable that has a coefficient of 1. Now, what that means, coefficient of 1, is to find a variable like this y that has no number out in front of it. And that implies then that the coefficient, a coefficient being a number that is multiplied to a variable, like this 6 is a coefficient of x. When a variable has no coefficient, we can put a 1 there in front, and that would represent a coefficient of 1. So first of all, solve for a variable that has a coefficient of 1. Well, in these two equations, we already have that set up. Then it says to substitute the value of the variable in the other equation. What that means is this. If y is equal to 6x plus 16, and this y are equal to one another, or are the exact same number, then it is reasonable to assume that 6x plus 16 then would equal 5x plus 13. So we substitute in the place of this y the value of y, which is 6x plus 16. Here's what it would look like. 6x plus 16 is equal to 5x plus 13. Alright. Now, the next step is to solve for x. First thing you want to do is combine your variables. Just like this. This would cancel. This would become just x, or 1x, plus 16 is equal to 13. Then you subtract 16 on both sides, which would give you x then is equal to negative 3. Now, for this equation, we know, or these two equations, we know that the x value is a negative 3. What we need to find now is the value for y, because you need to have an ordered pair. So now we take the value of x and substitute the value of x, which is negative 3, into one of the earlier equations. So either one would be fine. Let's take the top one. Y is equal to 6 parentheses. Now the parentheses is where the x should be, but we're going to replace this x with a negative 3. So we're going to put negative 3 right there. Now finish up the equation, plus 16. So 6 times negative 3 is negative 18 plus 16. Add those together, you get a negative 2 is equal to y. So then my ordered pair is a negative 3, negative 2. My x is negative 3, my y is negative 2. You can check this if you take this equation, take these two numbers and plug them back into both of these equations. Negative 3 in the place of x, negative 2 in the place of y, or even here, negative 3 here, negative 2. What you would get is that both sides of the equal sign would become the same number. Alright, so when you have both equations solved for the variable, like with this here, then you would work it out in this method. Let's look at another type of problem and see if we can solve that. Hold on. Okay, let's scroll up. Here's another equation. Now notice, again, we're looking for having one of the equations solved for a variable with a coefficient of 1. Well, if you notice, our y here is solved for a coefficient of 1. All right. So then, let's take the value of y and do the same thing. Substitute it in the place of y, which is this y right here. Your equation would look like this. 6x plus 8 parentheses. Now here's where I put the value of y. Negative 5x plus 8. And then finish up the equation is equal to a negative 4. Okay. Now let's go ahead and solve. We would do this first. 6x plus 8 times negative 5 would be a negative 40x, and then 8 times a positive 8 would be a positive 8 times 8, I believe, is 64. Oh, yeah. No. Yeah, 64 is equal to negative 4. All right, let's solve. I want to first combine these two. Positive, negative, that right there becomes a negative. So positive 6, negative 40 would be a negative 34x plus 64 is equal to a negative 4. Let's subtract 64 on both sides. That goes to 0. Bring down my negative 34x is equal to negative 68. Okay, now divide by the negative 34 on both sides. And I would have x then is equal to positive 2. So, I know my value for x is a 2. So now the next question is, what is the value of y? Well, let's take the easiest, either equation works. Let's take the easiest one. Y, this one is already solved for y. Negative 5, parentheses, where the x is, let's replace the x with the value of x, which is 2, plus 8. Alright, negative 5 times 2 is negative 10, plus 8. Negative 10 plus 8 is a negative 2. So then y is equal to negative 2, and so my ordered pair is 2, negative 2. Alright, we have one other problem that I'd like for us to look at, and that is right here. Scroll up. Now in this problem, neither equation is solved for a coefficient of 1. However, for a variable that has a coefficient of 1. However, if you notice, we have one right here. Of all these variables, this is the only one that has a coefficient of 1. So, first thing we should do is solve this equation for x. And here's how we do that. Take the original equation, x plus 5y is equal to negative 2. Now, move this 5y to the other side of the equal sign, isolating this variable, negative 5y. Notice that this cancels. Notice here, these two are unlike terms. One has a y, one does not. So, we say x then is equal to a negative 5y minus 2. Okay, now we've solved this for x. So, take the value of x and plug it into the other equation. So, top equation, negative 3. X then is equal to negative 5y minus 2. Now, continue the rest of the equation. Plus 3y equals 24. Alright. Let's do distributive property here. You have negative and a negative makes a positive 15y. Negative 3, negative 2 makes a positive 6 plus 3y equals 24. Combine your y's, gives you 18y plus 6 equals 24. Subtract 6 on both sides, which gives you 18y, that goes to 0, equals 18. Divide by 18 and your y value is equal to 1. Y is 1, so plug it into the other equation. X is equal to negative 5 in parentheses. Put the value of y in place of y. So negative 5 times 1 is negative 5 minus 2, that is negative 7, is equal to x. So then I have negative 7 comma 1, and that is my intersection point of this equation. That concludes our discussion over system of equations using the substitution method to solve.